Have you ever wondered what happens when someone with a badge picks the wrong person to harass? Late one night, on a lonely stretch of highway, Officer James Daniels thought he'd found an easy target in the woman driving alone in the black sedan. What he didn't know was that Lieutenant Colonel Angela Carter had spent 20 years commanding elite military units in combat zones, and she was about to teach him the most expensive lesson of his life. This isn't just another police misconduct story. This is what happens when abuse of power collides head-on with someone who understands the law better than the person enforcing it. By the time this confrontation ended, one career would be destroyed, one person would go to prison, and an entire police department would be forced to transform. Buckle up for the true story of how a power-drunk cop's worst mistake cost him everything. The blue and red lights flashed in Colonel Angela Carter's rearview mirror as she drove home from a late meeting at the Pentagon. It was just past 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the rural Virginia highway was nearly empty. She checked her speedometer, 62 miles per hour in a 65 zone, and frowned, pulling her black sedan to the shoulder. Strange, she thought, mentally reviewing her driving. Her military training had instilled in her a meticulous attention to detail, especially when it came to following rules. 20 years in the Army had taught her to be precise in everything she did. Officer James Daniels approached her window, flashlight beam aimed directly at her eyes. Angela noticed he kept his other hand resting on his holster, an unnecessarily aggressive posture for a routine traffic stop. License and registration, he demanded without introducing himself or stating the reason for the stop. "Good evening, officer," Angela replied calmly, keeping both hands visible on the steering wheel as she'd learned was safest. "May I ask why you pulled me over?" Daniel's posture stiffened. "I'll ask the questions here. License and registration." "Now." Angela nodded politely. "I'm going to reach for my documents in the glove compartment, officer." She moved slowly, deliberately, retrieving her military ID, driver's license, registration, and insurance information. Daniel snatched the documents, his flashlight beam moving across her military ID with a lingering pause. "Army, huh? You people think you're above the law?" Angela's eyebrows raised slightly, but her expression remained neutral. "No, sir." "May I please know why I was stopped?" "You were swerving," Daniels claimed, though they both knew it wasn't true. "Been drinking tonight, Colonel?" His tone made the rank sound like an insult. "No, officer. I don't drink and drive." Daniels leaned closer to the window, his breath visible in the cool night air. "Step out of the vehicle." "Officer Daniels," Angela said, noting his name from his badge, "I've been driving safely and within the speed limit. I've provided my identification as requested. Unless you're detaining me based on reasonable suspicion of a crime, I'm not legally obligated to exit my vehicle." Daniel's face flushed. People didn't usually question his authority, especially not in this county where he developed a reputation for being untouchable. His hand moved to his holster again. "I said get out of the car. Do you want to go to jail tonight?" Angela remained calm but firm. "Officer, I respect your authority, but I also know my rights. If you're not detaining me for a specific violation, I would like my documents back so I can continue home." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Fine. Have it your way." He stepped back, speaking into his radio. "Dispatch, I'm going to need backup for a possible DUI. Subject is being uncooperative." Angela activated the voice recorder on her phone, placing it on the passenger seat. She also pressed the emergency button on her military-issued satellite phone, a precaution she'd learned during her deployments. When a second patrol car arrived 10 minutes later, Daniels seemed emboldened. He approached her window again. "Last chance. Step out of the vehicle or we'll remove you." Angela looked past him to the second officer. "Officer, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Angela Carter, U.S. Army. I've been illegally detained without cause, and Officer Daniels is escalating the situation unnecessarily. I'd like to speak with a supervisor." The second officer, a younger man named Peterson according to his nameplate, looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, it would be easier if you just cooperated. I understand, Officer Peterson, Angela replied calmly. But I'm not legally required to exit my vehicle without probable cause. Officer Daniels hasn't provided any valid reason for this stop. Daniels' patience snapped. That's it. You're under arrest for obstruction. Officer Daniels yanked open Angela's car door, his face contorted with anger. Out. Now. Angela recognized the dangerous situation unfolding. Her combat experience had taught her to de-escalate when possible, but also to stand firm when necessary. This was one of those moments where yielding would only make things worse. Officer, I'm going to exit the vehicle, but I want to be clear that I'm doing so under protest, she said, her voice steady and authoritative, the same tone she used when commanding troops in high-pressure situations. I'm recording this interaction, and I will be filing a formal complaint. As she stepped out, Daniels immediately spun her around and shoved her against the car. The sudden aggression caught her off guard, but years of military training kept her from reacting instinctively. Hands behind your back. Daniels barked, reaching for his handcuffs. Officer Peterson, Angela called to the second cop, who was watching with visible discomfort. Please note that I've shown no aggression and have identified myself as a military officer. This treatment is unwarranted. Peterson shifted his weight nervously but said nothing. Daniels began an aggressive pat-down, his movements rough and unprofessional. Let's see what you're hiding, Colonel. I'm not hiding anything, officer. This search is illegal without probable cause, Angela stated firmly. I do not consent to this search. I don't need your consent, Daniels sneered. I smell alcohol. That's false, and you know it, Angela replied. Your body camera will show no signs of intoxication because there are none. Daniels paused for a fraction of a second. He had deliberately not activated his body camera when approaching her vehicle. It was a tactic he'd used before when he wanted to operate without scrutiny. Finding nothing incriminating during his search, Daniels grew increasingly frustrated. He began searching her vehicle without permission, tossing items from her glove compartment onto the passenger seat. Officer, I do not consent to a search of my vehicle, Angela stated clearly, making sure her phone recorded every word. You have no probable cause. Daniels ignored her, continuing to rifle through her belongings. After finding nothing more incriminating than military documents and a half-empty pack of mints, his frustration boiled over. You think you're smart, don't you? He hissed, getting uncomfortably close to her face. Military types like you come through my county thinking the rules don't apply. Angela maintained eye contact, her posture straight and dignified despite the humiliating situation. The rules apply to everyone, Officer Daniels, including law enforcement. Something in her unwavering gaze made Daniels step back. For the first time, doubt crept into his expression. He was used to people cowering, pleading, or getting angry, reactions that gave him the upper hand. Angela's calm confidence was something he hadn't encountered before. Get back in your car, he finally ordered, thrusting her documents at her. Consider this a warning. A warning for what offense, officer? Angela asked, not moving. Just get in your damn car before I change my mind. Angela carefully gathered her scattered belongings, documenting the disarray with her phone's camera. She noted Officer Peterson's badge number and the patrol car numbers before returning to her vehicle. As she sat in the driver's seat, Daniels leaned into her window one last time. Drive carefully, Colonel. These roads can be dangerous at night. Accidents happen all the time. The threat was thinly veiled, but Angela refused to be intimidated. Good night, Officer Daniels. I'll be speaking with your supervisor in the morning. As the patrol cars pulled away, Angela didn't immediately drive off. Instead, she completed detailed notes about the encounter while everything was fresh in her mind. Names, times, statements, actions, all documented with military precision. At 8 a.m. sharp the next morning, Lieutenant Colonel Angela Carter, dressed in her full Army uniform with combat decorations clearly visible, walked into the county sheriff's office. The front desk deputy's eyes widened at the sight of her. "Good morning," Angela said, her voice pleasant but authoritative. "I'd like to speak with Sheriff Roberts regarding an incident that occurred last night involving one of your deputies, Officer James Daniels." The deputy fumbled with the phone. Yes, ma'am. One moment, please." Within minutes, Angela was seated across from Sheriff Michael Roberts, a 30-year law enforcement veteran with a reputation for running a tight ship. She placed her phone on his desk and played the audio recording from the previous night. Sheriff Roberts' expression darkened as he listened. By the time the recording ended, his face was grim. "Colonel Carter, I want to personally apologize for this incident," he said, his weathered face showing genuine concern. "This is not how we train our officers to conduct themselves." "I appreciate that, Sheriff," Angela replied. "However, I'm concerned this may not be an isolated incident." Officer Daniels seemed very comfortable with his approach. Roberts nodded slowly. "We've had some complaints about Daniels before. Nothing this concrete." He hesitated. "Would you be willing to file a formal complaint? With your recording and statement, we can take immediate action." Angela had already prepared a detailed written statement, which she handed to the sheriff. "I'd also like to request all body camera footage, dash cam recordings, and the official incident report." Roberts shifted uncomfortably. The body cam footage might be an issue. "It appears Officer Daniels didn't activate his camera during your stop." "That's very concerning, Sheriff," Angela said, leaning forward slightly. "Isn't that a violation of department policy?" "Yes, it is," Roberts admitted. "And it's one I take very seriously." While they were talking, Angela's phone buzzed with a text message from her commanding officer. "Carter, just got a call from someone at Virginia State Police about last night." "Everything okay?" The sheriff noticed her expression change as she read the message. "Is everything all right, Colonel?" "It seems word travels fast," Angela said. "My CO just informed me that the state police have already heard about this incident." Roberts looked surprised. "I haven't contacted them yet. I have colleagues in various agencies," Angela explained. "After what happened, I made some calls last night to see if Officer Daniels has a history of similar behavior." The sheriff's face tightened. "And what did you find?" 3 similar complaints in the past year alone, all dismissed due to lack of evidence. All involving drivers who were minorities or women. All during late-night stops on the same stretch of highway." Roberts closed his eyes briefly. "I wasn't aware of this pattern." "With respect, Sheriff, that's part of the problem," Angela said firmly. "Officer Daniels is operating with impunity because no one is connecting the dots." By noon that day, Officer James Daniels was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. His body camera was audited, revealing a pattern of selective activation that coincided perfectly with the complaints Angela had uncovered. What Daniels didn't know was that Angela's military position gave her access to resources far beyond those of a typical citizen. As a lieutenant colonel working in military intelligence, she had contacts throughout federal law enforcement. By the end of the day, the FBI Civil Rights Division had opened a preliminary inquiry into the department's practices. That evening, as Angela was reviewing documents for an upcoming military exercise, her home security system alerted her to a vehicle driving slowly past her house. The camera captured a familiar patrol car, not an official one, but Daniel's personal vehicle, a black Dodge Charger with tinted windows. 3 days later, Angela was driving home from a late meeting at the Pentagon when she noticed a black Dodge Charger following her. It had been tailing her for at least 10 miles, staying just far enough back to avoid suspicion, but Angela's combat-trained awareness had spotted the tail almost immediately. She called the state police on her hands-free system, reporting her location and the situation. "I believe I'm being followed by Officer James Daniels, who is currently suspended from the county sheriff's department. I'm concerned for my safety given his previous threats." The dispatcher advised her to drive to the nearest police station, about 15 miles ahead. Angela confirmed she would do so and kept her speed steady at exactly the speed limit. As she rounded a bend in the rural highway, the Charger suddenly accelerated, closing the distance between them rapidly. Angela checked her mirrors, maintaining her composure despite the adrenaline now coursing through her veins. The Charger pulled alongside her, and through the window, she could see Daniel's rage-contorted face. He swerved toward her vehicle, forcing her to veer onto the shoulder to avoid a collision. Angela's military training kicked in. She'd driven convoys through ambush zones in Afghanistan and Iraq. A rogue cop wasn't going to run her off the road. She accelerated, putting distance between them, then braked suddenly as Daniels tried to catch up, forcing him to overshoot. The cat-and-mouse game continued for several tense minutes. Angela kept the dispatcher updated on her location while maneuvering defensively. Daniels grew increasingly reckless, eventually ramming the back of her sedan. The impact jolted Angela forward against her seatbelt, but she maintained control of her vehicle. Her car's dashboard camera captured everything, including Daniels' license plate. "Suspect has struck my vehicle," she reported calmly to dispatch. "I am continuing toward the station." Daniels pulled alongside her again, this time pointing what appeared to be his service weapon at her. Angela made a split-second decision, slamming on her brakes while turning the wheel sharply. Physics did the rest. Daniel's Charger, traveling at high speed, couldn't correct in time and careened off the road into a drainage ditch. Angela stopped at a safe distance, keeping her eyes on the crashed vehicle while updating the dispatcher. Within minutes, state police cruisers converged on the scene, lights flashing in the darkness. Daniels was still trying to extract himself from his airbag-deployed vehicle when officers approached with weapons drawn. They pulled him from the wreckage, his face bloody from the impact, and immediately handcuffed him. As Angela gave her statement to the state police, Daniels screamed threats from the back of a patrol car. "You think this is over? Do you know who I am in this county? I've got friends everywhere." A state police sergeant approached Angela after securing the scene. "Colonel, we found an unregistered firearm in his vehicle, along with what appears to be several doses of illegal steroids. This goes way beyond harassment." Angela nodded, the pieces falling into place. Daniel's aggressive behavior, his mood swings, his sense of invulnerability, classic signs of steroid abuse she'd seen in some soldiers. "I want to press all possible charges," she told the sergeant. "This man is a danger to the public." As she watched the patrol car containing Daniels drive away, Angela felt no satisfaction, only a profound sense of duty fulfilled. Someone who abused power so flagrantly had no business wearing a badge. What she didn't know then was that this incident would uncover a web of corruption extending far beyond one rogue officer. Daniels' friends everywhere would soon be scrambling to distance themselves as investigations widened. The next morning, Angela received a call from Sheriff Roberts. "Colonel Carter, I owe you an apology. We've been looking the other way with Daniels for too long." His locker at the station contained evidence linking him to several unsolved cases involving missing evidence and excessive force complaints. The criminal case against former Officer James Daniels moved with unusual speed through the justice system. His attack on a high-ranking military officer, captured on multiple cameras and witnessed by state police, left little room for the usual delays and procedural maneuvers that often protect law enforcement officers from consequences. Angela sat in the courtroom, her posture military straight, as the charges were read: attempted assault with a deadly weapon, aggression with a motor vehicle, illegal possession of an unregistered firearm, possession of controlled substances, and, most seriously, attempted murder of a federal officer, since Angela's military position gave her federal status. Daniels looked nothing like the intimidating figure who had harassed her on the highway. His police uniform had been replaced by an orange jumpsuit, his confident swagger reduced to shuffling steps and restraints. His eyes, once filled with arrogant authority, now darted nervously around the courtroom. The evidence was overwhelming. Angela's vehicle camera, her phone recordings, the state police dash cams, and even Daniel's own text messages to fellow officers boasting about how he would teach that military bitch a lesson formed an airtight case. What surprised many in the courtroom was the parade of previous victims who came forward once Daniels was in custody. More than a dozen people, mostly women and minorities, testified about similar experiences: pretextual stops, threats, illegal searches, and in 3 cases, physical assault. One woman, a nurse named Sofia Rodriguez, testified through tears about how Daniels had pulled her over 5 times in 2 months, each time holding her for hours while searching her car, claiming he knew she was hiding drugs. "I was afraid to drive to work," she told the court. "I started asking male colleagues to escort me." The FBI investigation revealed that Daniels had been targeting specific types of drivers for years, using traffic stops as a way to assert dominance and, in some cases, to steal cash or valuables from their vehicles. The missing evidence from the sheriff's department often ended up in Daniels' possession. When Angela took the stand, she spoke with the clear, factual precision of a military officer. She described the events without embellishment, but her quiet dignity made the facts all the more damning. "Colonel Carter," the prosecutor asked, "in your military career, have you encountered individuals who abused their authority?" Angela paused, considering the question. "Yes. In combat zones, we sometimes encounter individuals, both enemy combatants and occasionally our own personnel, who become intoxicated with power. They begin to believe the rules don't apply to them, that their authority is absolute." "And how dangerous are such individuals?" "Extremely dangerous," Angela replied. "When someone with power believes they're above accountability, there's no limit to the harm they can cause." The defense tried to paint Daniels as a dedicated officer under stress, suffering from PTSD after a shooting incident 3 years earlier. They suggested the steroids were self-medication, the harassment a misunderstanding. But the evidence told a different story. Text messages between Daniels and other officers revealed a culture of targeting suspicious drivers, code for anyone who didn't fit Daniels' idea of who belonged in his county. After a surprisingly short deliberation, the jury returned with a guilty verdict on all counts. The judge, a veteran himself, addressed Daniels directly during sentencing. "Mr. Daniels, you were entrusted with a badge and a weapon to protect and serve your community. Instead, you used that trust to terrorize the very people you swore to protect. Your actions reflect the worst kind of betrayal of public trust." The sentence came down: 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 12 years. As Daniels was led away, he locked eyes with Angela one last time. The hatred there was palpable, but now it was impotent. His power was gone. The criminal conviction was just the beginning. With Daniels behind bars, Angela turned her attention to the system that had protected him for so long. Working with civil rights attorneys, she filed a comprehensive lawsuit against not just Daniels personally, but the entire sheriff's department, the county, and several supervising officers who had ignored complaints about Daniels' behavior. "This isn't about vengeance," Angela explained to reporters outside the courthouse. "This is about accountability and preventing future abuses." One officer has been removed, but the conditions that allowed him to operate with impunity for years still exist. The civil case revealed even more disturbing patterns. Internal Affairs had received 37 complaints about Daniels over his 8-year career, but not a single one had resulted in disciplinary action. Supervisors routinely classified complaints as unfounded without investigation, particularly when they came from minority community members. Angela's military background proved unexpectedly valuable during depositions. She approached the case with the same strategic thinking she applied to military operations, identifying key vulnerabilities in the department's defense, gathering intelligence through public records requests, and building alliances with community organizations who had been documenting police misconduct for years. The county initially tried to settle the case quietly, offering Angela a substantial sum in exchange for a confidentiality agreement. She refused. "This isn't about money," she told her attorneys. "It's about changing the system." When the case finally went to trial, Angela's methodical presentation of evidence left little room for denial. The department's own records, when properly analyzed, showed clear patterns of discriminatory enforcement and failure to supervise problem officers. The jury awarded Angela $3.2 million in damages, but more importantly, the settlement included mandatory reforms, body cameras that couldn't be deactivated during stops, civilian oversight of complaint investigations, implicit bias training, and regular audits of traffic stop data to identify potential patterns of discrimination. Sheriff Roberts, to his credit, embraced the changes. Colonel Carter did this county a service, he admitted during a press conference announcing the settlement. She exposed problems we should have addressed long ago. As for Daniels, the civil judgment against him personally meant he would lose everything: his house, his savings, his pension. The man who had once terrorized motorists with impunity would leave prison with nothing. 6 months after the settlement, Angela received an unexpected letter. It was from Sofia Rodriguez, the nurse who had testified about Daniels' harassment. "I wanted to thank you for standing up when so many of us couldn't," she wrote. "Last week, I was pulled over for a broken taillight. The officer was professional, respectful, and his body camera was clearly active. He explained exactly why he stopped me and what would happen next. When he handed me the warning notice, he said, 'Drive safely, ma'am,' not as a threat, but as a genuine concern. That small interaction might seem ordinary to some people, but for me, it was revolutionary. For the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid during a traffic stop." Angela pinned the letter to her office bulletin board as a reminder of why the fight had been necessary. The media coverage of the case spread far beyond the local county. National news programs ran segments about the Colonel versus the cop, highlighting how one person's refusal to accept abuse of power had triggered systemic change. Law enforcement agencies across the state began reviewing their own complaint procedures and supervision practices, not wanting to become the next Daniels case. Police academies incorporated the case into their ethics training as a cautionary tale. For Angela, the most significant outcome wasn't the money or the headlines, it was knowing that the next person Daniels would have targeted could now drive safely through that county. This story isn't just about one corrupt officer facing justice. It's about the responsibility we all share to stand against abuse of power, wherever we encounter it. Lieutenant Colonel Angela Carter could have simply filed a complaint and moved on. She had the privilege and resources to do so. Instead, she recognized that her position gave her the ability to fight not just for herself, but for all those who couldn't fight back, those without her training, her connections, or her understanding of the system. What made this case different wasn't just Angela's military rank, it was her understanding that accountability isn't about punishment, it's about protection. Every officer who abuses their authority makes the job more dangerous for good officers by eroding public trust. Every system that shields bad actors from consequences undermines its own legitimacy. The most powerful weapon against abuse of power isn't force, it's transparency. When we document misconduct, when we speak up, when we demand accountability, we create safer communities for everyone. As Angela often says when speaking to military leadership classes, power without accountability isn't authority, it's tyranny. And in a democracy, we have not just the right but the duty to stand against tyranny in all its forms, even when it wears a uniform we're taught to respect. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with others. These conversations about accountability and proper use of authority are essential in building better communities. Have you ever encountered someone abusing their position of power? Or have you witnessed someone standing up against such abuse? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might inspire others to speak up when they witness injustice. For those interested in learning more about your rights during police encounters, I've linked some reputable resources in the description. Knowledge is your strongest protection against abuse of authority. Documenting interactions, knowing your rights, and staying calm under pressure are strategies that saved Angela, and they could help you too. Subscribe to my channel for more true stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances and how their choices changed systems bigger than themselves. And finally, if you're in a position of authority, whether as a parent, teacher, manager, or public servant, let this story be a reminder that true leadership comes not from power over others, but from service to them.